start ahead of his title rival for this one. And then in Pro 1340, it's still up for grabs. Ken Savage, a great competitor who won the Lucas Oil School of Racing series last year, took his winnings and has applied it to the Blue Marble Radical Cup. He's leading the charge in the points in the 1340 class. And but the Bacons, that's Dad Seth Bacon, and more importantly perhaps in terms of points, young Jace Bacon, could still win the Pro 1340 championship. Now you might ask, Pro 1500, Pro 1340, they sound similar. Well, they use the same chassis, a Radical SR3, which is one of the most prolific racing cars across the globe. In fact, Radical has produced thousands of these machines, and it's a great stepping stone car. It's a great entry-level car to learn your craft in motorsport. The 1340, as you might expect, 1340 cc's from a motorcycle-derived engine. The 1500s, 1500 cc's, again from that motorcycle-derived power plant, completely rebuilt by Radical and its engine department in Peterborough, England, and all these cars hand assembled in England, flown or shipped by container across the pond, and end up in one of 10 dealerships across Canada and the US.
Well, it's impressive to me to see that the 1500s are in amongst the Platinum cars. They're very competitive with the Platinum cars that have more horsepower, but the Platinum cars are a little bit heavier, therefore the advantage goes to 1500 in the cornering. Absolutely, so you're dead right. So the Platinum class cars, the SR10s with that 425 brake horsepower, they just get on with it. There's no doubt about it. They're so quick in a straight line, and that allows us for them to pull away. But as you mentioned, the slightly lighter 1500s, it's such a well-balanced car, the Radical SR3, and it just allows you to corner so well. And that's what you're seeing, the dicing between the fastest in the Platinum class cars versus the top of the Pro 1500s. And we saw that crucially play out in race 1 this morning, where it was the number 119 of Jason Plotke who kind of got in the middle of the race for the win in Pro 1500. Nick Persing going to the left-hand side and the outside of the second to last corner, and Danny Dashelski and indeed race winner Robert Soroka going to the right-hand side, the inside. And unfortunately for Nick Persing, that dropped him down a little bit with a small trip to the gravel. But it's going to come down to the wire in this one. We're excited to see what's going to happen in the Blue Marble Radical Cup. This is race 2 of 3 during the Firestone Grand Prix of Monterey here at WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca. And it's actually John Field who will lead this field to the green flag. Alongside him will be Louis Schreiber in the 111, and then it's Wayne Williams in the 57. Look out for those three. They're the fastest in the Platinum class. This grid set by lap times from race 1. Robert Soroka was the pole sitter in Pro 1500 from Nick Persing. Miguel Grillo was third quickest in the opening race this morning. We're about to go green, and we are indeed, and Louis Schreiber's got a cracking start. Persing's also into the inside. They're 3, 4, 5 wide as we go down into turn 1. Now we're a little bit amiss up in commentary at the moment in terms of what we can see around this racetrack, but check out the number 19 of Nick Persing. He's the guy that's got to keep it calm, because Danny Dashelski in the 88, that black Wisco racing machine, will be charging hard. In the mix too is the 17 of Aurora Strauss, Austin Riley in car 20, and look out too for Miguel Grillo in the 23. So all of these guys are going to be vying for the race win. Meanwhile, there's a championship on the line. It's Persing versus Dashelski, the two young guns in the championship that have been duking it out from the opening laps in New Orleans at the start of this season.
And now it comes down to the final round of the championship. The final races, just points separating them entering this one. Further back in the pack, the drivers to keep an eye on in the 1340 class. It's young Jace Bacon in number 999. He'll be mixing it up with Ken Savage in the number 5. Savage leading that points battle at the moment. We'll see what Jace Bacon can do. Strong young kid, as we mentioned in today's earlier race. And it is Louis Schreiber who's still in the lead over John Field. Then it's Miguel Grillo who's taken the early lead in Pro 1500 from Nick Persing, who's having a look as they charge down into turn 1. Austin Riley looks like he's making it 3 wide with Greg Gorski and Aurora Strauss heading into 1. Wayne Williams has fallen back on the opening lap here at Laguna Seca. Meanwhile, it looks to be Arul Venkatesh who's behind Jack Yang and Will Lin. We'll try and pick up the order in Pro 1340 for you. I know there's a lot of fans from Arizona that have come out to support Apex Motor Club's drivers, and it's Seth Bacon who's leading the charge in that one from Vince Switzer and Chris McMurray, who had to take on a couple of new tyres after flat spotting them in that turn 1 melee this morning. So Jace Bacon sits 4th at the moment. Importantly though, Ken Savage down in 10th. So we'll wait and see whether he did cross the line, but that is not what Ken Savage wants in terms of his championship hopes. He was with a reasonable points buffer over young Jace Bacon, but with so many cars from the Crown Concept stable this weekend, it really will be a case of who can finish where, and if Ken Savage can't carve his way back up through Jace Bacon's teammates, Ken Savage championship lead might be done. Now in the number 19, Persing's done the business. He's passed the car of Miguel Grillo, so he's taken the lead of Pro 1500. We'll wait and see where Dashelsky is. He's still down in 5th position. So Dashelsky, the pressure's now on the car 88 from Wisco Racing, because he's got to get on the back bumper of Nick Persing if he wants to win this championship. At the moment, there's all sorts of points between himself and the number 19 out in front of Pro 1500. Grillo sits in there, Gorski, then Aurora Strauss, and then it's back to Danny Dashelsky. So all of a sudden, race 2 of the championship, or race 2 this weekend of this championship, has taken a turn for Dashelsky, who'd set it up perfectly, leading by 2 points as we headed into this one. Austin Riley in the mix. Soroka, who won the opening race here this morning, has been dumped down the order in the first couple of laps. From P1 in Pro 1500, he's now down into 7th position. Disaster for him, but he'll be still grinning from ear to ear with that first race win of his race car career. John Field's just gone quickest on that tour with a 1:26.4. So Field now has to find some pace if he can, and he is, if he wants to get up behind Louis Schreiber. We've got a full course caution out there that's going to bunch up the field. Unfortunately, we're unable from our position in commentary to see what's going on around the racetrack, but a full course caution. We'll try and work out who we've lost. Dashelsky is still in the mix. Wayne Williams is there as well. Aurora Strauss has tumbled down the order, as has Austin Riley. The person we have lost, I believe, maybe Greg Gorski. So we'll wait and see. No, there he pops through the timing. So timing and scoring just a little slow to catch up, certainly on our screen. So the running order at the moment is Louis Schreiber, John Field, Wayne Williams in the Platinum class. Then we're back to Jason Plocky in 4th, Jeff Ramsey in 5th, Jim Booth and Jason Greenwood rounding out the top 7 in Platinum. In Pro 1500, Persing got that early jump on Miguel Grillo in the 23 from Greg Gorski, and Dashelsky is now 4th in class. So he's certainly closed in a little bit on Persing after that altercation. Aurora Strauss survived. She sits in 5th in Pro 1500 from Austin Riley and Robert Soroka.
who's still in 7th. Ron Fletcher in 8th. Will Lin in 9th. Arul Venkatesh in 11th, with Jack Yang just ahead. In Pro 1340, it's Seth Bacon from Chris McMurray, Vince Switzer, and Jace Bacon now sits 4th. And Ken Savage has not completed more than 2 laps. So the number 5 looks to be on the sidelines, at least, in this motor race. And again, this has championship implications. Ken Savage and his team, G-Tech Motorsports, have done a sterling job all year long. They've been leading the points battle against a juggernaut, really, in Crown Concepts and Apex Country Club. And now, what has been a stellar season is becoming unstuck.
Pace car is going to pick up the field and lead them around until we can clear up the situation. Unfortunately, as Tom Brewer has told us, we're not sure where the incident is or who is involved, but the pace car will lead the field around. In the meantime, we continue to circulate. Your leader is John Field, as he's back, is showing back in front in the platinum category. Nick Persing drops back to 2nd. Then it's Miguel Grillo running in the 3rd spot, followed by Wayne Williams, Greg Gorski, Danny Deslowski, Aurora Strauss, and Jason Plotke.
Right, well, as it did in race 1 this morning, the pace car has reset things. It's certainly going to close the gap, and it's going to give a few guys a pretty good opportunity. Now, interestingly enough, the person that didn't come around then was Louis Schreiber. So the 111 that took the early lead in the platinum class has stopped out on the racetrack somewhere. John Field has now gone ahead.
He's retaken the lead, yeah. Because Schreiber had passed him and taken the lead from him. Fields did start from the pole, but lost the position to Schreiber. Now Schreiber has not come by.
Yeah, and that incident is in turn 3. We've just had confirmation. John Field, certainly with that, I think, is going to be crowned the Platinum Champion. And what a year it's been for John Field, the former American Le Mans Series star. He'd stepped away from motorsport for a number of years, just on the off chance, really, went to Atlanta Motorsport Park and joined the Primal Racing School, which uses the Radical SR1. Fell back in love with the sport. Now, our timing screens have just flashed up with Louis Schreiber. So thank God, the 111, we haven't lost him.
Oh, he's back. Okay.
He's back. He's back in the lead. So there we go. Good stuff. There he is, and we've gone green. Oh, well, no, we haven't gone green.
No,
we're still under full course caution, but obviously the safety car has...
Yeah, the starter is vigorously waving the yellows, trying to slow the field down. Don't know what happened to the safety car, but all of a sudden everyone has picked up the pace.
The safety car has actually come in.
You're right.
But we're not going racing again. So the safety car has come in. We're still under full course caution. A bit of miscommunication there somewhere. And Louis Schreiber, who was motoring down the front straightaway with the rest of the field, has certainly has got things going again. Now, we've got about 30 minutes left in this race. There's definitely some confusion down in the pit lane as well, with a number of teams throwing their hands up in the air because the starter stand certainly has the full course caution out. Meanwhile, I think the field thought because the safety car had come in, they were trying to go racing. So Louis Schreiber is in the lead of Platinum. This guy is sporting 2 massive blisters, one on each hand. At Circuit of the Americas 2 weeks ago, the conditions were so hot for this series, and
I got to say, from Radical's perspective, we were so impressed about how the cars performed in the heat, but what really suffered was some of the drivers, and Louis Schreiber developed these blisters on his hands. It was almost a stigmata in the final race. His literally hands bleeding through his gloves and leaving blood on the steering wheel. This guy didn't give up, came home in second position. Now we go green. The green flag waves. Louis Schreiber with John Field behind. Wayne Williams has overtaken Nick Persing, but Persing still in the lead of that with Miguel Grillo, Greg Gorski and Dushelski. So still a couple of guys between. Now the 34 was slow on the front straightaway here, it looked like.
And Schreiber and Field got a good jump on that restart over the rest of the field. They've broken away from the pack a bit.
He did, and I really wondered, and I was going to say before that confusion with the pace car coming in, that Louis Schreiber was really going to have to watch John Field. If there's one thing that a former American Le Mans Series star knows how to do, it's restarts and pass. And John Field certainly sticks it in wherever there is the smallest gap. He is an awesome machine when it comes to passing. And John Field now has to...
He's going to have to figure out a way to get around Schreiber. He has not done it yet, according to our timing monitor.
No, he hasn't. And Schreiber knows a thing or two about making these Platinum Class SR10s extremely wide. We'll have to see if Wayne Williams can jump on the back of John Field as well. It might be a three-way fight for the Platinum Class as they come around again. We're waiting with anticipation as the 37 of John Field goes by. Now this time, I believe, we have lost Louis Schreiber. Indeed we have. He's tumbling down the timing charts. So John Field takes over the lead in the Platinum Class from Wayne Williams. And all of a sudden, all of that hard work that Louis Schreiber had put in has come unstuck. The timing chart's almost a premonition there because we'd seen him flicker off the top of the chart. Well, now I think it's for real. Louis Schreiber... disaster striking Rhino Racing. Nick Persing still in charge in Pro 1500 from Grillo and Gorski. Then it's Dushelski with Aurora Strauss behind. Flying a little bit blind up here in commentary. We'll try and keep you abreast of the action. So it's Seth Bacon over Chris McMurray, Vince Switzer and Jace Bacon. That's the order in Pro 1340. Unfortunately for Ken Savage, he only completed 2 laps. Now the good news for Savage is that whilst he's not going to finish this race, he has taken the start. That means he will get points. Very, very importantly, he's got the points. And...
I think you said Ken Savage and Jace Bacon were in the battle for that championship.
They have, so that championship battle is going to drastically tighten because Jace Bacon's going to haul a lot more points away from Ken Savage. And meanwhile, the battle rages again in Pro 1500. Danny Dushelski's been working hard on that lap. He's cleared Greg Gorski. He's running almost alongside the 23 of Grillo as he tries to hone in on his championship rival Persing. Now, the Cameron Racing team suggesting that Persing was far more comfortable when he was out in the lead of the class, but he's going to be under all sorts of pressure because that menacing black number 88 of Danny Dushelski, the same car that's been hovering around him all season long, is again going to be right up behind the number 19 of Persing, and that is for the championship battle. So far, Persing would take the lead with just another few points ahead of his rival. Meanwhile, Grillo trying to make it 2 podiums for himself this weekend, and Greg Gorski, one of the stalwarts of the series, trying to mix it up with some of these young guns and do the job himself. Look out too for the number 17 of Aurora Strauss. She's running strong. And Jason Plotke finds himself 3rd in the Platinum class. So John Field starts another lap. And I tell you what, he's extended that gap. And the number 19 has got
Danny Dashelski behind him now. So now the championship rivals running line astern, third and fourth on the racetrack, but they're first and second in class and first and second in the outright title fight.
One of the drivers got a black flag. I did not get the numbers. They went by the starter stand, but the black flag was displayed to one driver.
Interesting. So a black flag, we'll have to wait and see who boxes. I'm sure any black flag given, if it's for a title contender, will be contended by those guys down in the pit box.
It'll be contested.
It will be contested indeed. The tension has continued to build all season long between Persing and Dashelski.
It just ratchets up.
Ratchets up with every lap that goes by, and it doesn't seem to matter what unfolds early on in the race. They're always line astern. Now in Toronto, that ended with drama, with both of them crashing out on the streets of Toronto, and it didn't impact the points because of that situation. Dashelski a little bit unlucky with some yellow flags earlier in the season. He does have a couple more wins to his name, but a championship is a championship. It's not just about race wins. You've got to keep collecting as many points. It's consistency, and that has been young Nick Persing at the moment.
You can win championships without winning races.
Absolutely. Persing still won plenty of those, though. Just not quite as many as Dashelski. But that could play out too, because if they get close in the points, if they match points, it will go down to the race wins. So it's going to go down to the wire. Speaking of pushing hard, John Field, a 1:24.4. So John Field in the 37 is trying to extend that lead and doing a good job of it. He's got a gap of 8 seconds now over Wayne Williams in the 57. And further back in the pack, it's Seth Bacon still from Chris McMurray and Jace Bacon. That's the top three in Pro 1340. Chris McMurray lapping with the 1:27.5s. Seth Bacon in the lead of that class, only in the 1:29. So McMurray charging hard.
Well, the Bacons, as you mentioned earlier, father and son.
Father and son love their motorsport. Seth Bacon getting quite emotional on the podium in race one. He was saying that really his son is his inspiration. The guys have come fresh into motorsport, fresh into the Blue Marble Radical Cup, and they're doing a really good job. And that battle again rages with Persing right over to the inside as they head down into turn one. Danny Dashelski looking racing and looking to the inside and then the outside of Persing. So Dashelski is not going to let up. He wants this championship just as much as the man in front. It really will come down to who is ahead in that final race tomorrow morning.
Dashelski was only a tenth of a second behind Persing the last time they crossed the start-finish line.
They were absolutely gearbox to nose. Gearbox to nose. It's tight out there.
It's been a long season. This is the three races this weekend at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca are rounds 16, 17, and 18, I believe.
That's it. So 16 races already in the bag. 5 different locations. We've been with IndyCar 4 times this year. It's been a great opportunity for the Radical Cup and the Radical races to come out and show their stuff. And there's a lot of young kids as well as some gentleman drivers strutting their stuff as John Field now has to deal with some back markers. There's a pretty busy collection of cars out there, over 35 cars taking the start of this race. Meanwhile, it's Dashelski who's fallen back, so I think he's had a go at Persing there on that lap. It hasn't worked, and he's got a few car lengths now, Nick Persing. The gap has extended a little bit.
Yeah, almost a full second, 9/10 that time by.
So Grillo still third in Pro 1500. Greg Gorski nipping at his heels. Amazingly, though, Miguel Grillo sets the fastest lap in class, a 1:27 flat, faster than the two leaders out in front. And that would put him on the provisional pole for tomorrow morning's pit stop race. John Field has gone purple as well. setting the fastest time outright. It's no surprise from that SR10 machine, a 124 flat for him last time by. So the Hankook rubber coming on strong. We often mention that this Hankook tyre likes to be worked hard.
You said it gets better as the race goes on.
It gets better as the race goes on typically. So it's no surprise really for us to see those times tumble as the fuel load burns off, the tyres come up into their window. And John Field, a 123.9. So just to prove the point there, every lap he's going faster and faster. Field knows what he's done this year. He knows what he needs to do to bring it home. Meanwhile, Nick Persing has Danny Dashelski still behind him, and they're navigating cars now. So a new element. There's already the element of multi-class racing. Now it's back markers as well. All the drivers will be aware of who's around them. They know that there's a big bout in the number 19 and the 88. And they need to be mindful of that as they have their own race. And Miguel Grillo doing a sterling job, sitting third in Pro 1500. Chris McMurray has now taken the lead in Pro 1340 from Seth Bacon and Jace Bacon, who's up to third. So again, it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds with any team tactics, or is it just going to come down to who's faster? The Crown Concepts cars running 1, 2 and 3. Now Jace Bacon needs to make up as many points as possible if he wants to overtake Ken Savage in the championship. He's got Seth Bacon and Chris McMurray in front, two teammates. Ben Blander sits fourth in Pro 1340 for Team Stradale out of Chicago. Then it's back to Vince Switzer and Brendan Wright, who finished on the podium in this morning's race.
Dashelski's closed a bit on Persing. He's only about half a second back, but he's going to have to watch his mirrors, as it looks like...
yeah, Miguel Grillo's just dumped down the order.
He was right behind Dashelski, and all of a sudden, he must have had an off or made a mistake somewhere, because he's dropped a couple of positions. He was less than half a second behind Dashelski.
Well, not only that, he was on for a podium position, and now that looks like it'll be Greg Gorski in the 24, as John Field sets another purple time, a 1:23.7. So John Field on fire at the moment around this racetrack. He said he was loving it. He came up to me before the race with a big grin, slapped me on the back and said, "This is just awesome stuff. IndyCar weekend, WeatherTech Laguna Seca Raceway.
Doesn't get any
The sun
better.
shines out. The racetrack is awesome. Let's go." And he certainly is. The 37 machine of John Field doing the business for One Motorsports. He's done the business all year long.
What does the series look like for 2024?
Well, some more big events. Again, we'll be alongside IndyCar for a number of those. We're waiting to officially announce that schedule with a couple of more pieces of the puzzle to fall into place. But we'll definitely be back to Barber Motorsports Park with IndyCar and Road America with IndyCar. So we're looking forward to it.
Same number of races next year?
Same number of races. It will be 6. And then the World Finals at the end of the season. We're looking forward to going to Portimao in a few weeks' time to run alongside the European Le Mans Series and have a number of drivers from North America take on the best of Europe, the best of the UK, best of the Middle East, and the likes of Australian drivers, New Zealanders as well. It's going to be a big festival. Grillo continues to fall down the order. We've just noticed Steve Cameron walking up and talking to the guys at S's Racing. He wants Wayne Williams out of the way because Persing and Dashelski are fighting for a championship. And Steve Cameron, of course, a strong competitor in his own right, a fantastic race engineer. But Wayne Williams is doing his own thing. He's running second in the Platinum class. He's got his own race to fight for. So perhaps some pleading, perhaps some bargaining going on in pit lane.
Promises.
There we go. John Field passes the post once again with 14 minutes remaining on the clock. We'll wait and see who comes past next.
Last time I looked, he had more than 8 seconds in hand over Williams.
So there's Williams, and tucked up almost behind him is the number 19 of Persing, with Dashelski just behind. Steve Cameron back in the S's Racing pit box, gesturing away. He wants Wayne Williams out of the way. He's saying, guys, we've got a championship here. We're racing for some big prizes. It's all on the line and it's coming down to the wire. And Nick Persing has to do this. He has to keep Danny Dashelski in the 88 at bay. What would it be like? The pressure under the visor, inside the helmet. Your arch rival right up behind you. Any little mistake could be the opportunity that Danny Dashelski needs. Nick Persing in front of his home crowd, in front of a huge contingent of fans that have come out here to support him with everything to play for. It's coming down to the wire in the Blue Marble Radical Cup Series. And what a place to do it. WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca. What an event. The Firestone Grand Prix of Monterey. There has been no change in the order so far in Pro 1340. That's still Chris McMurray from Seth Bacon, Jace Bacon behind. But all eyes around this racetrack on the number 19 and the number 88 of Nick Persing and Danny Dashelski. They're duking it out for the Pro 1500 title. They're duking it out for the outright championship as well. These guys have collected more points than anyone else. And again, it's Persing who leads Dashelski. He's got just the smallest gap, the slight bit of breathing room between himself and his title rival. It is going to come down to the line. It could be who just finishes a race, as Robert Soroka has passed Greg Gorski. So Soroka now in third position in Pro 1500. Austin Riley has Gorski's tumbled down the order, so Gorski with a big moment after being in third place in class. It's Soroka with Jack Yang behind. Ron Fletcher, then Austin Riley. Aurora Strauss has tumbled down the order a little bit from earlier as well. Right. So 12 minutes back on the clock. Persing, let's look at the lap times. A 1:25.6 last time by. He was just 1/10 faster than the 88 of Danny Dashelski. Steve Cameron. Again, he spent more time in the S's pit box than he has his own pit box.
Dashelski's back on the charge.
And Wayne Williams has passed. Wayne Williams has been passed by Persing and Dashelski, but he's motoring back alongside using the power of the Platinum class. Now he's got to be careful because Jason Plocky is coming up as well. So whilst Danny Dashelski and Nick Persing duke it out with Wayne Williams in the mix, Jason Plocky is charging hard. He could be on for second in the Platinum class. Robert Soroka's got everything to play for another podium in Pro 1500 with Jack Yang, who's having a cracker drive for Group A. Really impressive stuff from the 21 machine. Jack races over in the UK in the Haggerty Radical Cup United Kingdom Series with Valor Racing. This weekend he's back with the home team, if you like, Group A out of New York. And he has had a sterling drive this afternoon at WeatherTech Raceway.
Plotky's coming, but he's a long way back. He's about 8 seconds behind Williams. There's a long way to go to catch him and mount a challenge.
So we'll pick up the leaders again. Just going back through the timing here to see Jace Bacon has eclipsed his father, so it's Jace Bacon now second. And Dashelski is still sitting behind Nick Persing, who's got a gap now. Wayne Williams has let them go, finally. So Wayne Williams now will just have to tour with Jason Plocky behind, closing in a little bit. The battle for Pro 1500's been released. Steve Cameron can return back down to the other end of the pit lane and return to his pit box. His lobbying has worked out. It's Nick Persing with some clean air in front of him, fighting with Danny Dashelski. Robert Soroka, 6th in the Pro 1500 class. Jack Yang, 4th. Ron Fletcher, we haven't mentioned his name much in this weekend, and he's sitting 5th. So a strong result for him. Austin Riley rounding out the top 6 in that class.
And Chris McMurray is leading the 1340 category.
Yeah, and Jace Bacon just set a 128.2. That's his best time. But Chris McMurray is touring at 127.8. So certainly Chris McMurray is faster than his apprentice, if you like, Jace Bacon, who is certainly going to catch up in the points to Ken Savage. That was a disastrous day for G-Tech Motorsports, and Ken Savage, who seemed pretty calm on the podium after this morning's race, was just the tough luck, really tough luck for him. Great competitor all year long, and he still has the opportunity to bring home this championship, but it's going to be a lot tougher. So this race has certainly, it's been quite a bit of commotion. Some names up high early on, and they've tumbled down the timing charts. The action has been strong, and it remains so. John Field out in command. He's backed off the pace.
Yeah, I was going to say, he seems to be cruising. His last lap was a 129, while Persing and Deselski both in the 125s, about 4 seconds a lap quicker.
Yeah, you just almost wonder whether he's had a moment or had a small issue. Seth Bacon going past the front straightaway in the number 3 machine. There we are, John Field, a 124.1. So whatever miscue he has resolved, will peer through the window and eagerly await who will come past in Pro 1500. It's Persing who does so. The number 19 is still in the lead from Danny Dashelski. Seems to have his match. Wayne Williams flies by in 2nd place in the Platinum class. Jason Plotke still 3rd.
In fact, Persing has extended his lead over Deselski. He's got over a second in hand now.
Robert Soroka comfortably sitting in 3rd with Jack Yang 4th in Pro 1500. Ron Fletcher under all sorts of pressure from the young gun, Austin Riley. And if you want to check out an amazing young man, check out Racing with Autism. Google that and you'll learn all about Austin Riley, the challenges he's faced and the absolute triumphs that he's created in motorsport, taking on all sorts of races up in Canada, winning a Radical Championship up there, coming down, winning an American Championship. He's been across to Silverstone and raced in the UK and finished 10th on his debut over there in a highly competitive championship. John Field now really shows what an SR10 can do, a 123.3. So that's what 425 brake horsepower, 380 foot-pound of torque will do. A 123.3 around the new pavement here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. Persing with a back marker, but it's still with a gap over Danny Dashelski. Wayne Williams goes past. He's comfortably covering off Jason Plotke in that beautiful pink, grey and blue machine.
That back marker for Persing has allowed Deselski to cut the gap by half. He's less about a half a second behind now. That is the battle for 1500, Pro 1500. Danny Deselski in pursuit of Nick Persing.
And Will Lynn in car 66 with Greg Gorski in the 24 all over his gearbox. So further back, look out for that battle. Will Lynn for One Motorsports racing his teammate Greg Gorski. Then we're back to Chris McMurray, who leads Pro 1340. He's doing a really good job. He's right up in the thick of the 1500s and as well as a couple of platinum class cars out there.
Just under 10 minutes remaining.
The 999 of Jace Bacon just passed the post. He currently sits second with Seth Bacon. So I think, dare I say, just
maybe a little bit of a team order or two between father and son, or just a helping hand.
You told me yesterday there were no team orders.
Well, I think father perhaps has just decided, Seth has said, look, Jason needs all the points he can get if he's going to stay in this championship hunt. Pursing with Dushelski closing in, honing in, perhaps Dushelski, after falling back in the middle of the race, senses that there's 4 minutes remaining. Perhaps he was just keeping those hand-cooked tyres comfortable in their operating window, but not extending them. Soroka ahead of Jason Plocky. And that means that Jack Yang will have some work to do, but it's Ron Fletcher. And with Austin Riley, Will Lynn, Greg Gorski, the 1500s are closing in on each other. Ron Fletcher with a fast time then, a 1:25.9. So he's putting in solid performance, as is Austin Riley, duking it out with a 1:26 flat. They're hammer and tong out there. Chris McMurray puts in his best and a 1:26.8. He's the leader in Pro 1340, so he's certainly going to ignore any orders he gets from Crown Concepts. He wants to take the win.
You talked about the hand-cooked tires and how they get better as the race goes on and the fuel load lightens in the car. If you overheat those tires and you back off and cool them down a lap, will they come back?
They will indeed. So yes, if you lock it up or just get a little bit too aggressive, a little bit too much steer into a couple of corners and overheat them, yeah, you can definitely bring them back into their right window by just easing off. The person who's not easing off is Pursing.
Yeah, the gap between Dushelski and Pursing, 0.4 of a second. It was 0.3 of a second, and Pursing picked up a 1/10 difference in that gap. So they are, again, just nose to tail, and they have been all through this race.
And amazingly, Pursing almost matching his personal best, a 1:25 flat again. This time it was 0.61 compared to 0.49. Meanwhile, Dushelski's now found a bit of pace, a 1:25.1. So only 1/10 in it in terms of lap times last time by.
In the meantime, Field continues to motor away from everyone. His best time was a 1:23.3. So he's now opened that gap between the battle of the two Pro 1500 contenders, Pursing and Dushelski, to 27 seconds.
Wow. Talk about check out. And there he is. He just passed. In fact, he's just about to lap a fellow Platinum class competitor in Jim Booth. So John Field just storming, charging through this field at the moment. And I think a couple of these drivers will be relieved to see the 37 come up and eclipse them, because it means they've got to do one less tour around this racetrack. It's the only advantage, if you like, of being lapped. You can get in a little bit sooner. Meanwhile, it's Pursing, Dushelski. Pursing with a 1:25.9 versus Dushelski at a 1:25.9. The number 22's been in for a pit stop, perhaps a penalty. We're closing in with 1 minute remaining. Didn't see the white flag. It hasn't been displayed yet. So there's this tour of the racetrack and one more at least for Nick Pursing, who's got all the pressure, all the weight of the world on him. Talk about what it makes or means to make champions. And talk about what it means to make champions, and that is just being able to absorb the pressure at the right time. Just elevate the performance when you need to.
White flag.
Yeah, the white flag has been prepared, and it's out for John Field, who's back in cruise control after a couple of back markers there, a 1:25. So we've got a little bit of time to catch our breath and see who it will be as they commence the final tour for race 2. And it is again the number 19, Pursing, who seems to have a calm demeanor. Danny Dushelski is back. The gap has expanded just a little bit. 0.6 of a second for Danny Dushelski. That's what he's got to close up. But not only that, then he'd have to make the pass. Could that be enough to make a late lunge into the corkscrew? Could it be enough to make a late lunge into the final corner? I tell you what, if you're not trackside, get trackside, particularly in that area of the racetrack.
because you're going to have two guys, two young guns to keep an eye on for the future, duking it out on this final lap of this 40-minute race.
Deselski continues to apply the pressure, but Persing has not flinched.
He hasn't, has he? He's done, what would you call it? A champion's performance. That's what it's been. We'll wait and see if that's how it plays out. Cameron Racing guys and Radical Northwest will be crossing everything down there. Can he come home? Of course, it's not going to be over. There's John Field, though. It's over for him. He is our new champion in the Platinum class. Congratulations to him. He takes the win. And we've got a young gun in the stands waving a checkered flag as well, replicating what the drivers will about to see. Who will it be? Will it be the 19 or the 88? It's the number 19 who comes over to take the win in Pro 1500. Nick Persing takes the win from Danny Dashelski. He sets his personal best on that last lap. But amazingly, Dashelski went even faster, a 1:24.8. So he threw everything at it to try and get past the number 19 for that final time. Congratulations to Wayne Williams, who comes home second in the Platinum class. It's Robert Soroka who will complete the Pro 1500 podium. And Jason Plotke is third in Platinum. Well done to Jack Yang, who's fourth in Pro 1500. What a race for him, as well as Ron Fletcher, Austin Riley, Greg Gorski rounds out the top 7 in Pro 1500, and Chris McMurray takes yet another win for Crown Concepts in Pro 1340. From Jace Bacon, there's Chris. We'll wait and see. Jace. Roy Strauss finishes up her race.
The margin of victory for Persing over Deselski, 44 hundredths of a second.
Now, what would it feel like if you're Danny Dashelski? The points swing back in your rival's favour by just that small margin. This is absolutely nip and tuck.
Well, the key is that you're still alive. You've got one more race to try and reverse things tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock.
I tell you what, I don't know what everyone else's schedule is, but I'm getting up early because this race is going to be a cracker. The Blue Marble Radical Cup North America Series coming down to the wire.
So one championship's decided.
One championship is decided. John Field, he is our new Platinum class champion. We can get that one out the way.
One down, 2 to go.
2 to go. Nick Persing back in the lead of Pro 1500. Congratulations to him to take the win of Pro 1500. And, of course, Chris McMurray taking the win in Pro 1340. We're going to go down and celebrate the victors in this one. I've got to catch my breath. And I'm quivering with anticipation for tomorrow's race. I can't believe that we've gone 17 races now, and we're still trying to work out who out of these two young guns is going to take the title.
Well, that's the way you like to see a series go, with the decision for the championship coming down to the final event of the year, and hopefully on the final lap.
Exactly. That's all we want to see, a straight fight. They did it well, and that's what's amazing about these guys. Robert Soroka, had a chat to him after the podium this morning, and he was saying, look, I love this series because the racing is clean. We race super hard, but there's respect out there on the racetrack. And he said it's so lovely to be driving with Nick, with Dashelski, mixing it up with these guys, because A, it's rewarding. If you can beat them, you know you've done the business, but also you know you're going to have a clean fight.
Also been relatively clean racing. There have not been a lot of offs like there were in some of the other series that were running here earlier today.
Yeah, well, hopefully we can get some green flag racing tomorrow morning. I got to go down to that podium. Dick, once again, it's been a pleasure to be alongside you today.
Tom, thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning to decide the final championships for the Blue Marble Radical Motorsports Series. Tom Drewer, Radical Global Motorsports Director.